citizens, denizens, sovereigns, suzerains, whatever you want to claim to be. Good to have you here this evening, this Sunday evening, the first day of the week. Not the 7th, not the Sabbath, like I would say. Well, I'm going to do something a little different this evening. This episode is for the group Tactical Sovereignty. And a few years ago, I wrote out my own declaration for a few different reasons and sent it out to a handful of entities that I felt it was appropriate to send them to. And uh, the idea basically behind the declaration is you stop and think about when you go into another country. You know, they want to know, where you're going, what you plan on doing, how long you're going to be there for. Do you have anything to declare? They'll ask. And everybody here today is on whatever country you're on. And have you ever declared, have you ever put anything out, letting them know who you are, what your plans are? Or do they just assume that you're one of the other slaves or sureties or subjects running around that they get to manipulate and that you have absolutely no idea what's going on, and so you'll be all the more malleable and easy to control? And that's one of the things you kind of want to avoid. And the situation I was going through at the time when I did it, I've never had any legal issues or anything like that happening. So fortunately, I've been able to look at things with open eyes, didn't have blinders on. I wasn't focused or honed in on one little thing, trying to get out of something, nothing like that. But the issue was really that I was coming home from work late at night and lived in kind of a retirement area. And so coming home at 12, 1, 2 in the morning, you're one of the very few people on the road. So you kind of look like low-hanging fruit. Like you might be somebody that's either coming from or going to a party. So you pull over with any list of excuses that they can use. And there's so many people that want to say, oh, they've got to have, an articulable reason for pulling you over or some sort of crime. No, they don't. They just make those up. They're always making those up in their head, as they're just on the job thinking anyway. Oh, what would I do? What would I say in this situation or that situation? They've already got that all pre-planned. Um, the issue is that you don't have anything pre-planned. And a lot of people I see, they would break things up, like maybe declarations like this or something like that, and they'd go and like send it to their sheriff or their mayor or whoever, or go and file it in county record. Yeah, none of that does any good. And the reason why is because those people don't listen to you. And those people listen to, they only listen to their boss. And who is their boss? Their boss would be Secretary of State. You go and read through the United States Code, and it constantly says through there, according to the Secretary, or as the Secretary allows, or um, according to what's permitted by the everything is the Secretary. So it's like, oh God, that's who you talk to, the Secretary, because who do you think puts the information in the computer to start with? When they go and punch you in or whatever to see what kind of info pops up, where do you think that info comes from? It comes from the Secretary of State. So naturally, that's really about the only individual you need to contact. I did curiously though also send my packet, and I'm going to explain this packet this evening. Hopefully, try and keep it brief. I did send this packet to the Chief Judicial Administrator for the district that I currently live on for Florida, and my place of nativity, a place where I was born on Michigan. Did the same thing there. What was really interesting when I sent it to them, because first you need to realize, whether you're like in an upper or middle or lower district or the eastern or middle or western district judicially, each district will have its chief administrator, its chief administrative judge. And that is the judge that assigns people to cases and monitors things. That's the one in charge for that district. So that's who I communicate with. But it was interesting. Everything I do, I would send a green card receipt at return. That way you know it's been received. And when you send something like that to people, you don't send it just anonymously to their office. You name the office holder, because if you just name like a general office, probably nobody's even going to sign it. You might get it back blank, all right? You name the office holder. And I did the same thing with the secretaries of state. When I sent to the secretary of state for the state where I live, state where I was born, and at the federal level, Department of State. It was interesting with those judicial administrators because I received my envelope back from them before I even received the green card back. I got the green card back like 1 or 2 days later after receiving the packet back. And they basically put on there, they kind of like 12B6'd it in a way, oh, you don't have a case going on right now, not sure what you're really referring to. It kind of acted like it didn't really mean that much to them. But when I was looking at the packets that came back from those two places, I thought, something's weird. Something just seems off with these. And I noticed that at the top of the pages, because I put them into a binder, just like a clip binder that had the clear sheets in it, and I put each piece of paper into a clear sheet. The exhibits all went into a clear sheet. And I was looking at it, and I noticed that all of those sheets, they're all in the right place. Everything was in the right order, but they all had kind of a V crease at the top of them. And I thought, that's interesting. Why would it have like a V crease in it? Well, if you reach down inside one of those clear folders and grab the top, okay, and grab it with, your two fingers and your thumb, you're going to put a crease in there. And so what had been done, and this happened at both states, each piece of paper had been removed, and for why? To photocopy it. You can't photocopy it inside of, those clear sleeves. They'll shine back on the copier. So they had to remove each one, but they did. They removed each one, obviously photocopied it, slipped it back in, sent it back in the mail, same day they received it. Thought that was really interesting. And another reason for doing the declaration, not just so that there's something on the record as to who you are, what you are, where you stand. You're letting them know you're not one of the belligerents running around out there, that kind of thing. But it's also a matter of standing in honor. All through the ages, providing a notice has always been a matter of standing in honor. And I'm not going to get into details this evening because a lot of people want, oh, what were the results? What's happened since you did it? I'll tell you what. I had situations in my life that I had multiple interactions with maybe the court or with police officers, and it wasn't necessarily anything criminal, nothing to do with me. 90% of it all had to do with somebody else most of the time. But what I did notice is that I got treated completely different all of a sudden. Completely different. You start getting treated more like you're talking to your next door neighbor instead of somebody that's like trying to be forceful on you or be dominant in the conversation, that kind of thing. Yeah, all of that totally went away. And the relationships were so much simpler, so much easier. So let me get into this declaration. At the top of it, if you notice, if you're on YouTube, you can go down in the description box. There is a spot there where you can pull it up, look at it while I'm going over this. And if you notice on it, it's not going to start out with to, Secretary of State Ruth Johnson for Michigan at the time. It's not going to start out like that. I left that area blank because I was sending it to multiple entities. Added that later. But just really started out with saying, greetings to whom this present may come. The same wording that is on the authentication when you do the authentication of live birth. And I've also had a lot of people ask me on there, what is that emblem on there? And it's the Greek sigma symbol. It looks like an E. It stands for S. I think that's the 18th letter in the Greek alphabet. And I shouldn't really need to tell you what the S stands for. But the reason why I did it, it wasn't so it would look cool or anything like that. I did it because everything I've ever sent, I wanted it to be one page, one piece of paper. That's it. You want to keep things simple. And with the amount of wording I had, which wasn't a lot, it was going just over 2 pages. So I noticed that if I use that symbol in place of the name I use, then boom, it all shrunk down, fit on one piece of paper. I was like, cool, perfect. And yeah, it does kind of look a little bit cool. But it started out letting the reader know that, Brian Glenn Parker, hereafter known as, and the Sigma symbol. So that's just kind of the beginning statement on it. And like I said, you can pull it up and read it. And I put on there, I was born Michiganian. I use that term for Michigan rather than Michigander. I don't really like that. It kind of sounds like a goose. um, and a Michiganian, people need to realize, you know, words mean things, prefixes mean things, suffixes mean things. And the suffix there, IAN, is actually a suffix that means belonging to. So saying, I belong to Michigan. And I also stated on there who my mother and father were. And one of the main questions everybody has is the exhibits, because I don't list those for everybody to look at. This is a private situation. Even though it's a public notice that goes to them, people need to realize it's not for the general public. It's for the public, and the public are the elected officials and office holders. Joe Schmo walking on the street, you're the general public, just in case people don't know the difference between those two. But people want to know, what the exhibits were. So for that item number 1, where I listed my mom and dad, I also listed their marriage certificate and their marriage license. One people get from the church, the other one people get from the state. Letting them know, for instance, hey, not a bastard child here, for instance, right? Okay, number 2, um, I wrote information listing the qualification of my signature regarding any documents, any contracts, anything like that, and that anything that didn't have the copyright symbol on it was void, right? And I use that word void several times through here, and part of that is because that is a negative affirmation. People need to realize what negative affirmations are. Like if you are writing affidavits, anything like that, it is a positive way of saying a negative. That's the best way really to explain it. I had an attorney explain to me one time that the courts, when they look at paperwork, they look at it the way your subconscious mind works. Your subconscious mind doesn't see what's not there. Your subconscious mind sees what is there. And so if you're littering your paperwork with I do not and I refuse and that kind of stuff, they might kind of tend to ignore that a little bit. So the best way really to make your points is with a negative affirmation. And show you a couple examples of that through this. But on there, I also listed um, the status of being a non-US citizen, voter, or resident. One of my issues with US citizen, and I asked people through the years to show me a definition, because you'll see documents that'll ask you to check off if you're a US citizen. You will not find anywhere any listing or definition for a US citizen. I've had people go, oh yeah, you can, and they'll send me definitions of a United States citizen. I'm like, no, that's not what the way they write it. In legal terms, they write things very specifically for a specific reason. All right. So when you see that U.S. citizen question, there's no definition of that anywhere. People even send me definitions for citizen of the United States. No, that's not the way they list it. You have to answer according to how they list it. And there is no definition for U period S period all cap citizen. Doesn't exist. And the exhibits for that were two exhibits. It said, see exhibits 2 and 3. And one was the copyright on the signature. You can't copyright a name, but you can copyright a work of art. And I listed the autograph or signature, whatever you want to call it, as a work of art. And along with that, also, I sent the rescission of voters' registration. And not what I sent to the supervisor elections for that, but the document I got back from them confirming that I was not on the voter rolls. All right, number 3, it said Sigma is the holder in due course and claim of beneficial interest to the organization or trust with counterdeed evidencing legal and equitable title with full faith and credit. Trespass is without consent. That's another negative affirmation, without consent. And said see Exhibit 4, which was the authentication. On to, I think, number 4. Um, I listed something regarding bloodline there and a court case out of Alaska. This is something I wouldn't recommend. That if I had to do over again, I wouldn't list that there. Number 1, doesn't matter if I was still on Michigan or if I was still on Florida. I'm not in Alaska and I'm not in the 9th District. And when you're using other court cases to uphold something that you're doing, you really need to be within the same district. You need to find court cases within that district. What they will say is that those other cases may be persuasive, but they're not mandatory. So when people are like on South Carolina and they're listing a case from Maryland or listing a case from Nevada, the courts aren't going to pay any attention to those. Those don't mean anything to your court case. I hate to tell you. I did list um, the allegiance that I had, and that there was no, I want to say there was no, I was without allegiance. Again, negative affirmation. I was without allegiance to corporate entities, and I listed a UN declaration, which is something they will follow, and that was a Declaration of Indigenous People. And yeah, I was born here, so I'm indigenous to here. And you don't have to be a minority to be an indigenous, sorry. And then I was operating in my private capacity, uh, subject to my election of a nation or kingdom. And one of the things I put for that was exhibit number 5. It was a photocopy of the front of a 1611 Bible. That is the kingdom, that is the law being elected by me. And I notice a lot of people, they see the term elected and they're like, oh, I've never voted. It's not the only thing elected means. Elected means choose or a choice that you've made. You've elected to do something, for instance. Okay. On to number 6, uh, Sigma, that E, Brian Glenn Parker, may transmit the coin of the realm for private purposes due to the necessity and void of election. And due to necessity, because that would fall under the law of necessity. There's very few other choices that you have, especially at the time that I did this. Now we're getting to a point where there are some different businesses that may accept like a cryptocurrency or something like that. But overall, out of necessity, you're kind of stuck with the FRN, which kind of stinks. But on any documentation you do or any transactions you make, if possible, if you can do those transactions in gold and silver, absolutely do it in that, because you're stepping outside of a jurisdictional situation there. Right. Then number 7, sigma, being formed as an establishment of religion. Go read the First Amendment. The writers, when they referred to religion, they didn't mean an establishment like Methodist Church or Baptist, or that, you're a pilgrim or Protestant or whatever. They referred to a life of piety when they spoke of religion. And that's what they meant there in the First Amendment. So, anyway, yes, being formed as an establishment of religion and enjoying innocent passage, quiet enjoyment, and safe harbor. I would recommend people looking those up. Um, shall lend aid and comfort to those operating in a lawful capacity. All right, we have to realize not everything legal is lawful. And at the same time, you want to close out, you want to be cool with them, you want to be nice and let them know you're not a belligerent. Whenever they come to talk to you, you're not going to start yelling, screaming, and, I'm an Article 4 citizen, all that kind of crap. No, you're going to be professional. And that's why you're providing notice, because you are being professional. And along with that, also, another exhibit I gave was my certificate of ordination, because I did become ordained by a non 501c3 church, which I highly recommend. It means they're not under the state, they're independent as well. And you're not doing that because that you need to have some piece of paper from another man or anything like that. No, not at all. You're only doing that because you're letting them know. You're showing them who you follow. Just like I said, showing photocopy of of a 1611 Bible. You're showing them who you follow. You're showing them what kingdom you're under, what law you're going to follow. Because if you don't proclaim to them who your God is, they're going to assume that they are your God. And I don't think you're going to be really happy with that choice at the end of the day. But that's exactly what the system has done today. They've put their butt on the seat of the most holy, and they expect to be treated with the same honor and dignity as you should treat the most holy. Well, if you let them know who you're following, guess what? Things soften up quite a bit, and they start treating you with a little bit of dignity and honor. And at the end of the day, that's all anybody really wants. And to add to that, what what happens if and when you are ever standing in front of the judgment seat of the Creator, and He's going to be like, huh, you followed along like a good slave with all the protocols and everything like that of probably the number one terrorist organization that has ever existed on Earth. What do you have to say for yourself? Have you ever done anything to show any degree of separation? But that's exactly what you want to do, at least for your own sanity, for your own heart. I remember one time I was pulled over and I did have the declaration in the vehicle. And no, it's not something I hand out. Oh, you got to read this for. No, nothing like that. They asked if they could look in the car. I said, sure. And I had that laying in the back seat, had the declaration laying there. And they opened it up and they were flipping through reading it. And the officer asked me, she said, what is this? What is this for? And I said, do you comprehend everything in it? She said, yeah, I do. I said, good. I said, you pull me over. You are wearing, your badge. You got a gun on. You've got a vehicle marked. You're definitely with the sheriff's department. It's obvious as to who you are and what law you're standing on and what you're defending and what your position is. But when you pull me over, do you have any idea about any of that when it comes to me? And her eyes kind of lit up and she was like, yeah, that's a good point. So anyway, I haven't done anything on the declaration before, so I just want to do this short little video to cover that. And if people ask about the authentication as well, because that was one of the exhibits, down in the description box on YouTube, that will be listed there as well. Check that out. Nobody, when I did the authentication, I looked all over. I could find no directions anywhere on how to do it. But at the same time, I knew why I wanted to do it. And unfortunately, most people don't know why. One of the main reasons why I wanted to was because I was going to do this declaration, okay? And I needed it as an exhibit. I wanted an original copy. I, I, because just a photocopy means nothing. I want an original copy. Lets them know you're serious, you know what you're talking about. You are fully aware of the organization that was registered when you were born, and they see you as being nothing other than an agent or a representative of that organization. And since they created it, then who has authority over it? Bingo, they do. Exactly. Hope this helped everybody. Have a great week. Talk to you later. Bye.